There are several words and phrases that come to mind when you think about Lori Vallow. One of those words is why. Why did she start down the path that led her to jail and a trail of bodies? The bodies of those who were once very close to her. By every account, Lori was like the mother of the year for years and years. Do you wonder what changed and why she ended up doing what she did?
Why is the question. Why is the question on all of these issues about every aspect of this case. It's just so baffling.
Rich Robertson is the private investigator who was hired by Kay and Larry Woodcock to try to find Tylee and JJ. He spent a lot of time on this case and still doesn't know why.
I have no answer for why any of this happened. It's just shocking and sad and painful. It's just ultimately just so mysterious.
The answer may be that Lori was suffering from mental illness. That's what her attorneys appear to be arguing, and we're in no position to discount that possibility. But today, we are going to take a hard look at the reason Lori gave to some of the people who were closest to her. I'm Morgan Lowe, and you are listening to True Crime Arizona, Lori Vallow's Deadly Delusions, Chapter 5, Zombies. Of all the words and phrases that have been tossed around, printed in headlines, and used in true crime videos and podcasts that focus on this case, it might be the word zombies that raises the most eyebrows. How that word became a part of Lori's vocabulary, if it became a part of Lori's vocabulary, is not known for certain. What we do know is that Lori and Chad had a rating system for people. They were light or dark. Some of them were zombies. That meant a zombie had taken over the person's body. Their spirit is stuck in limbo until the host body is physically killed. One of Lori's friends, Melanie Gibb, told investigators she heard Lori refer to Tylee as a zombie in the spring of 2019 and refer to JJ as a zombie in September of 2019, right before police believed JJ was murdered. But the story of how we first heard about Lori and Chad's belief in zombies is worth some extra attention. It involves Lori's niece, Melanie Pawlowski, and her new husband, Ian. Melanie followed Lori to Rexburg, Idaho from Gilbert, Arizona, back in the fall of 2019. She was going through a tough divorce from her previous husband at the time. Melanie looked to the aunt she often viewed as a mother.
I had my own reasons for going, and I love my Aunt Lori, and it absolutely was a benefit to be close to her. She's been somebody that's given me unconditional love, and somebody I've leaned on. We've both been through hard things.
Melanie and Ian sat down for an interview with me in the early summer of 2020, just before JJ and Tylee's remains were discovered on Chad Daybell's property. At this time, Melanie was defending Lori, and Melanie was one of the closest people to Lori in the month or so just after the kids vanished. You got out there, your aunt is there, but you don't see your cousins. Was that strange?
This was a big move to try to, kind of move forward after Charles was shot and to remain safe with the kids. So as soon as I move up there in November, I see some of their stuff, but I don't see them there. And Lori says that they're safe and they're doing everything they can to keep them from the people that are trying to harm them. I believe that.
Melanie had recently met Ian, who she married after dating less than 2 weeks. Ian, this does not seem like the kind of situation somebody would voluntarily get involved with. How did you start getting suspicious that there are people talking about this family?
I'd say it would probably be the evening of Thanksgiving. Melanie receives a text message from Rexburg police saying that it would appear that your house has been broken into. Later we find out that Rexburg police had actually kicked in her door looking for JJ. At that point, Tylee hadn't been counted as missing. Yeah, I mean, it was concerning, absolutely, because, at that point, Chad and Lori had also left, and we had no communication with them. Initially, when they left, I didn't really think a whole lot of it. They're planning on going to Hawaii. They told me as much, and, but when they left, we couldn't get a hold of them, had no clue where they were. I didn't really have a timeline on when they would be going to Hawaii. It was a shock finding out that Chad and Lori are gone, kids are missing, people's doors are being kicked down because they can't find the kids.
It was at this point that Ian decided to do something drastic. He went to the authorities, then wore a secret recording device when he was around his new wife and her family. And he wrote what is now known as the zombie memo.
What led you to put those thoughts down on paper and then end up going even to the investigators?
I didn't know the FBI would be there, but I was open to sharing everything that I knew at that point. And it seems like the information I shared with them turned into this nationwide just frenzy. I went and I gave them something and they just ran with it. So, so they gave me a recording device. I recorded some conversations with Chad and Lori.
Did you have reservations about recording those conversations? I mean, this is your new wife and this is your new family, and now you're going to record them secretly.
I mean, there was a little bit of hesitation, but at the end of the day, I saw that as the fastest way to get from point A to point B. Nobody knows where these kids are. There's serious concern about their safety. I've just married Melanie, and I love her with all my heart, and I want to get her out of this. And I saw that as the fastest way to do it. If I could get some concrete evidence for law enforcement, for them to be able to say, this is where Tylee and JJ are, or this is what's happened to them, it's open and shut case, and we're done. We move on with our lives, but it didn't play out that way.
Ian says he was unable to get any information about the location of Tylee and JJ, or anything else of value for authorities. But he wrote down everything he knew in a memo, that notorious zombie memo. In it, he described Chad and Lori's outlandish belief system, which involves translated beings like Chad and Lori, who cannot die, do not need sleep or food, and do not feel the sorrow of the world. And zombies, human bodies that have had their original spirits forced from them and have been possessed either by a demon, disembodied spirit, or a worm or slug. Ian wrote Melanie had been told by Chad and Lori that their children had been possessed and had become zombies. She told me she was worried that Alex Cox, Lori's brother, may have had to take care of the kids.
So I write down everything that I can remember saying to the FBI, how I explained it to them, what her fears were, what my fears were. I write it all down and give it to her lawyers. And how the document got out, it wasn't us.
How did you take that news?
As big of a betrayal as it sounds and felt in the moment too, I have to look at the entirety of it. And he's recording my conversations, and there's nothing with that. And there's nothing between Chad and Lori that was said.
Do you think that Tylee and JJ were in danger? Do you think that Lori thought they were zombies?
I didn't think they were in danger and didn't have those fears and doubts until this welfare check. And then Chad and Lori left. I didn't have contact with them, and I'm absolutely worried.
Their father, Chad Daybell, is charged with one of the most savage crimes to ever befall this community.
Just today, the CBS News magazine 48 Hours interviewed Chad Daybell's children, all 5 of them. One of the exchanges that caught my attention had to do with zombies and whether they thought their father was a cult leader. Because let's face it, all of this really does sound cult-ish.
He never said a thing to us about zombies. The first we'd ever heard of it was in a news report.
I think if he was going to start a cult, we would be the prime members.
He would have started with us. It just didn't happen.
Did Chad and Lori really believe in zombies? Or was that just a cover to get rid of anyone who stood in their way, who stood in the way of them being together? And again, how did Lori go from being the perfect wife and mother to this?
Nobody's all one thing. So Lori's this role model for lots of people, and yet apparently she had this dark side.
That's private investigator Rich Robertson.
One of the headlines early on was that Chad Daybell was a cult leader and that Lori was involved in a cult. Would you categorize or characterize what they were doing as being cult-like?
I'm not sure I see this as a cult. It may have been a cult that was forming.
Rich thinks Chad may have been building a following when he met Lori.
And he and Lori together, it seemed like, were the ones that were building the following. But it wasn't a very big following. And unlike the kind of cult that people think of, most of the time they didn't have a compound, they didn't have a large group of people that were separating themselves from society and controlling their thoughts and beliefs. I mean, all these kinds of things that you typically think of when you think of a cult weren't quite there.
So we're back to where we started, with the word why. Can anything really explain what these people, what Lori Vallow is accused of doing? A belief that her children were zombies is one possible explanation, but we will explore others and more likely explanations in future episodes. This podcast is written and reported by Morgan Lowe. Edward Ayala is the editor. True Crime Arizona, Lori Vallow's Deadly Delusions, is a production of Arizona's Family, CBS 5, 3TV, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.